You're listening to the Energy is Love podcast.
Set?
I'm set.
This episode is recorded on May 5th.
May 5th.
What's today, babe? Tell the people the significance of today, because you know it better than I am.
And it's not, I don't have my watch anymore. I
when
looked, I have a bracelet.
Actual eclipse?
It's 1:34 Eastern Standard Time, 1:34 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But it is a full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio. We are all feeling.
Is it that Scorpio? Get over here.
Kind of. Right? Kind of. There's a lot of people right now that are like holding on and hair's like just like everywhere and barely hanging on. It's a big one. It is a big one. So like for all of those that are feeling very emotional and very physically affected as well. And things are coming up and surprises and holy shit, just be kind to yourself. You've got this.
This is the downside of us not recording live, though, because you will hear this and you'll be like, oh, that's why my Friday last week was so fucked up. Yeah, that's why.
Yeah. And then the ones that are really feeling it are going to be like, okay, so it's going to be tapering off soon. Yes. And they're still feeling it. And yeah.
And we could get into what
still
we're feeling.
Twitching.
But that's not what this episode is about. We had some awareness recently of, because we're constantly like not just working on our relationship, obviously, but it's kind of also how do we help people and how do we help the people that we work with as well as the people that listen to this podcast. Like we're always trying to provide an insight into how you can not just live life better, but have a more fuller, complete, healthy relationships, heal from trauma, all of those things, right?
Yeah.
And we suddenly had, out of nowhere, we had this awareness of something that we have worked on consistently and healed in a sense, right? Yeah. Everything is always healing. But
we have healed, we are healing, and we still need practice.
This thing that we've done was a massive shift and change that suddenly helped everything else, I think. It was like a huge turning point in our relationship when we started implementing this. And I think that's like it has contributed, I think, to a lot of like fights not being as bad as they used to be. Our recovery time, like our ability to repair after fights and after certain situations has been enhanced. It's just all in all, our relationship is so much better, fuller, more like connected because of what we are about to talk about.
Right.
Wouldn't you say?
I would say. I mean, there's also some other things, but this is a big thing. If you're like, what's one thing that I should start focusing on?
This would be it.
This is
massive.
It's a big one.
So we're going to talk about the concept and idea around how you can start taking accountability for your actions and apologizing. Like, it's that simple, but it has so much more layers to it.
Right.
Because you might think that you're being accountable. I thought I was accountable in our relationship for a long time. Turns out I wasn't.
And for you over apologizers out there that are like, I say sorry for everything. There's a difference. There's a different level. There's saying sorry for everything and actually like apologizing. And also this goes into one of those like healthy relationships again, not where somebody's demanding you apologize for everything. And then you're hearing, okay, I really need to up my apologizing game.
So this isn't like if you're in the spot in your relationship, and truthfully, you don't even have to be in a relationship for this to be applicable because it's accountability. Like it's literally, if I make a mistake in life, or if I say I'm going to do something and then I don't do it, or, I mean, we all know what accountability is. I don't need to give examples. Do you
communicate with humans ever? Then this is relatable to you.
This is going to be helpful for you. So just in the context of like our relationship, what we've done is both been willing to be accountable for our actions, our choices, our words, our previous like accountability for the mistakes that we've made in the past, as well as the mistakes that we make now. And then our ability to like apologize and say sorry and have those sorries really come from a genuine place, rather than from all the other places that apologies come from sometimes.
To get out of trouble or just to shut the other person up or to like take responsibility for things that aren't yours, all the sorries and all the, even the manipulation ways that it can come out, all of that.
Yeah.
And somewhere in there, you start to dig in and find the authentic apology, the true one. And that means that you're not over apologizing, but you're just like, when you have something to say sorry for, when you have something that you're like, and it's not just like, oh, I'm sorry I did that. Oh, I'm sorry you're offended by that. It's like, wow. Okay, I see how I didn't show up here, or I see how that hurt you, and that's not something that I want to do again, or this is a behavior that I want to change. This is something that I'm not just going to tell you words and keep doing what I'm doing. This is something I'm going to express to you, my awareness, my acknowledgement of my actions and my choices, and I'm going to actively do things different and not just having to keep apologizing for the same thing over and over again because I'm only apologizing so you get off my back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this goes much, much deeper into, we're going to speak at it from the perspective of what we've experienced. The likelihood is you're going to relate to it in some way because it's not just an us thing. It's kind of like a human thing, right? Yeah. So the idea is what we recognized, and this came like much later in our healing journey, right? We had to get through so many different layers of things to actually get to the point where we could recognize and acknowledge our relationship with like accountability and with apologizing.
Yeah.
So if there's something that I've done wrong and I am expected to apologize for it, or even if it's like if I hurt you in some way, right? If I cause you some sort of emotional distress, if I make a mistake, I have my default response inside initially feels exactly the same way that it used to feel when I was a kid and I would get in trouble, where I would feel ashamed immediately, regardless of the severity of whatever it might be. And then I would feel scared, like I was like in trouble. And if I didn't apologize, then there was going to be some sort of repercussion and punishment. And like just solidifying that down, like not solidifying, just taking that further and further and further. It eventually gets to the point where at the core of it, it feels like you're no longer going to love me. So a mistake happens, I need to apologize for it, and it sparks core wounds of feeling like I'm going to lose love.
Yeah.
And all of that is long before you ever came on the scene, right?
Yeah.
All of that is way early childhood stuff. And then being accountable for actions is so interrelated to that, where it's like, I've made a mistake, I need to own up to that responsibility, and then I avoid accountability because I know that it's going to trigger that shame spiral of I'm not lovable and I'm not worthy of love and that I'm going to lose love. So the act of being accountable and being like, hey, I'm really sorry for this thing that I did, I would avoid that because I'm subconsciously avoiding the feeling of like I'm not loved and I've hurt the person that gives me love and now they're going to take that love away from me, right? So it's all interconnected with my parents, but then it's also like I can see it so much from childhood when I would have that dynamic play out with friends, with like teachers, growing up, anybody that was in some sort of authority figure role or mentor or anything like that. Same thing would happen.
Yeah.
I remember, I'm going to tell a story.
Tell a story.
Ready? Mm-hmm. So I was in high school and I played tennis and we were at a big tournament that took course over the weekend. So we got to travel and we were staying in a hotel. And obviously it's like a bunch of teenage boys, staying in a hotel far away from so we had a lot of fun. But I ran past my buddy's hotel room and it was like the type of motel. It's probably a motel, right? Where they had, like it was outdoor hallways. I don't know how to describe that. Like, there's just like a landing or a walkway that you enter. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's a motel, right?
Yeah.
And
the door into your room comes from the outside,
yes.
Not from inside a building.
Yeah, not inside a building. And thank you.
You're welcome. I was very like articulate there.
Yeah.
And, like I really honed in on those words. You're welcome.
And I run past the window, which was the bathroom window, and he's in there showering, and I hit the window to scare him. And in turn, I break the window, which like shatters glass into the shower. Obviously, it's a big deal. It's an issue. Suddenly there's vandalism. And we're like, oh shit, what do we do? because we're in trouble now, and we're not in trouble. I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
Right. I'm the person that's in trouble. And so our tennis coaches that are there's an assistant coach, and he's like, at the time in my life, he was a really safe place for me. And I really loved this guy. I really looked up to him. So his opinion of me really mattered, right? And he was the one that was like coming up the stairs and that we were going to have to talk to. And I was like, oh my God, I can't lie to this guy. But I have to lie to this guy because I have all of those issues with accountability and apologizing and making a mistake and everything like that.
And he matters. You don't want to lose his love.
Exactly.
Essentially. Yeah.
Yeah. So we end up, when I say we, like if my buddies are listening to this, like I take full responsibility that this was my fault and my actions. And they did a beautiful job of like supporting me through it with lies. And so we created this whole story of like some other, because I think there were other kids that were in the tennis tournament that were staying in the same hotel. So they ran past and they were, fucking with us, and they hit the window and they broke the window. So we alleviated any responsibility and placed it on some mysterious other teenager.
Was it an actual person that you're like, I saw this kid? No,
we didn't see who it was. They just were yelling as they ran by and hit the window. But in reality, it was Craig that hit the window. But there's just one of many examples in my life where I lied in order to avoid accountability, right? And in order to avoid accountability and apologizing, because all of those things stem from this really like core wound of feeling like I've messed up and I'm going to lose love.
Yeah.
So can you relate? I know you can relate, obviously, but.
Yeah. Like some of the things that were popping up too is like, oh my gosh, I think I got lost listening to you, and I think I might have forgot where I was going to go with this. Apologizing also just to, because like you get caught, right? They're like, so you're like, yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry I did that. You're not really sorry, and you're almost making it like, how dare this person ask you to apologize, so you're going to apologize. And you don't mean it at all. Right. And inside you, you're like, who the fuck are they to apologize? Don't they know what I'm going through? What this was like, it just like really gets flipped in this really like toxic way. And it can be a very, very like, you are being harmful and toxic by continuing these traits, these apologize. And like, I don't feel like I owe you anything. And it's really about how I was feeling. This needs to matter about me. Or like, well, if you wouldn't have done this and I wouldn't have done this, all of that. But what it actually comes to is these scared little kids that were likely in, getting in trouble isn't fun. Even if you're like that unicorn out there that had the perfect life and the perfect parents, that you happen to have healed parents and that didn't portray any shit on you. Like, also, I want to meet you. But for the rest of us that didn't have that wonderful experience, that had trauma come in through parents, through family members, through schooling, through religion, all of the society, way that it comes through, the small town, the big city, wherever, right? Being in trouble is always scary, and is always something that is like, it's going to hit you. You have that belly drop. It's always scary. But
it activates the nervous system
so much. Like you are like, it throws you into survival mode.
Yeah.
But there's different levels, right? So you have these levels of survival mode is where this is always hard. But then you take it to other levels of where there's maybe a really abusive relationship or really toxic that's it can be violent or just like emotionally destructive in all kinds of ways, where physical repercussions or your environment safety gets used against you and weaponized, and your body gets violated. So there's another type of, when you get in trouble, bad things happen to you. Yeah. How are you going to try and learn to like, oh, being accountable is safe. I'm allowed to make mistakes and apologize for it. Even
things like the silent treatment.
The silent treatment. That's horrible.
Like when you get in trouble as a kid, and the result was
withholding affection,
like
withholding.
You have to go to your room, like isolation, withdrawing of connection.
Then they stop talking to you.
Yeah. Like unless go sit in the corner. Like even just things that, like growing up in the 80s, there were so many different levels of right? I'm sure people can relate to what happened when you got in trouble, from physical abuse to all
right.
sorts
And then
of
growing up in
different
the
things.
80s, had kids, like all of these things. We keep like passing all of these really toxic shows. Like each generation is doing their best to do it better. And I feel like each generation is doing it better. But there's not a generation yet that's like, you know what, we got this figured out. We know how not to be toxic to our children and to our partners and to our coworkers and to, you're still trying to learn these things. You're experimenting and unpacking all the ways that were unhealthy that you learned and trying to figure out what is healthy. So even though these are incredibly toxic and harmful, and if you find yourself in these patterns, just a little bit of grace here. Just a little bit of grace. This isn't a get out of jail free card and like, oh, it's not my fault. However, like you were taught this.
Exactly.
You were taught this. You learned this. So you get to get curious with it and look at other ways and try and, you know, how can I practice this? Who is a safe partner that I can practice accountability with? Because that's a big deal. You don't go to an abuser and be like, I'm sorry I did this, you know?
I never had awareness. Like, I mean, it took us, like I said, it took a lot of healing that we had to go through and kind of being able to look at things differently. But I never had awareness of how, like, accountability and apologizing and being truthful in our relationship had any correlation or connection to how I would get in trouble as a kid growing up.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't have those two things connected in my brain. It took a really long time for me to be able to see how that it's literally the same thing, right? Where I've upset you, I've done something wrong, I've made a mistake, and I'm just going to do everything that I did as a kid in order to get through that experience, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to get angry, I'm going to get upset, I'm going to get defensive. I'm going to lie, I'm going to, you know, hide and cover up and try to distract and pretend. Like, how many times did you make a mistake? How many times did you make a mistake as a kid that you hid? Like, you tried to hide it.
All of them.
Right?
Like, it was never safe.
You're like, I'm going to hide the thing that I just did.
I was too busy taking accountability and responsibility for everybody else's actions, my own actions. I was like, I've met my quota. My actions aren't going to come into role here. Yes, I'm wrong for existing. So anything that I've done that's wrong, I'm going to hide.
Yeah.
I am going to absolutely hide and hope you don't. And that if you do find out about, it's not just, I'm like, oh, this is bad. And
It's
not just like,
bad.
oh, like there's violence you have to be afraid of. There's, you know, and the shame that comes. I was shamed so hard on top of violence. You know, whatever I did was a direct reflection on my parents, and how dare I make them look bad? How did all of this stuff? It was like, wah! So what did I do? You know, some people do this and they become the perfect child, right? They're like acing everything and like succeeding at everything.
That wasn't me.
I wasn't me either. I was like, oh,
cool.
Let's fuck this shit up, right? How many things I can't do anything right anyway, so might as well just do it all wrong.
Do exactly what I want to do
right?
anyways.
Oh, I'm embarrassing you, am I? Hold my beer. That's right, I had one. It was bad.
Hold my Shasta.
Yeah, hold. No, I definitely had the beer. I was wild. I used just complete rebellion as a way to, and then it switched. And then when I got older, like when I got to like my first, you know, adulthood, and then I became a parent.
Yeah.
And then there was that switch. I'm like, I'm going to do everything right. I tried so hard to be perfect. Oh, and it was just as successful as intentionally fucking everything. You know, it was hard.
Yeah.
So bringing accountability it was terrible. It was terrible.
So hard, right?
So
scary.
hard.
So I think the thing that really made the difference for us, like the ability to heal through this process, because you can see as we're talking about it, you're probably relating with all of these things. And maybe you've already had this connection, and that's great if that's the case, right? If you've already seen how it's really clear and obvious.
Right. If you've already done it, stay along for the ride. We get there too eventually.
Right. It's very clear of like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense why I avoid accountability in my current relationship because this is the way that I was raised. Or if I'm expected to be held accountable, I'm going to lie. If I'm like, all of those things make total sense.
Yeah.
And
to not always have these like massive excuses too. Like, I will be accountable, but this was really a series of events that could not be helped, which is why it's still really not my fault.
Right.
So I'm being accountable, but it's really not my fault. So I'm not really being accountable because
Somebody
it happened
else's
because
fault?
of all of this. This person did this. And it's so sneaky. Like, you don't even realize it. You think you're like, okay,
You think
yes,
you're being
I did
accountable.
this. I did this, but because of all these things. Had all these things not happened, I wouldn't have made that decision. But I did make that decision. So I take full responsibility. That's not accountability.
It's not.
That's not even close.
It's not at all.
That's pseudo accountability. What's that? Pseudo economics. I went to Ferris Bueller. No, voodoo. It was voodoo economics. Okay, I totally butchered that.
Right.
That's all right.
Ferris Bueller's a great example of somebody that didn't take accountability.
Right.
Right. That motherfucker didn't go to school
Right.
ever. What did he do? Came up with so many ways to lie, manipulate, and hide his actions so that he could go live the life that he wanted.
And at the end, he didn't even take responsibility for the car. Cameron did.
Yep. See.
Jeez.
Well, thanks, Ferris.
Right. Also, how many times did you watch Ferris Bueller?
I'm still like wanting to be Ferris Bueller. So I'm going to call in sick from this podcast in a minute. What really changed for us was there's a certain level of healing that you get to, I think, and everybody's different, right? So if this doesn't resonate with you, then that's okay. But there comes a point where you are confronted with the things that you're confronted with your mistakes. You reach a point where you're like, there's no other way to, it's like, it's really the core of shadow work, where part of shadow work, there's layers to it, of course, but part of the process is that's where all of your shame lies, is in the shadow. So when you start going into it and you start looking, eventually you have to confront that shame.
Yeah.
And like, there's layers to it, of course, but a first, like if the front wave of shame in your shadow, what that is all the stuff that you've done. And it's all the things that you deem shameful. It's your actions. It's the stuff, it's the mistakes that you've made consciously and subconsciously. And it's the stuff that you have tried to lie and manipulate and hide and avoid taking accountability and responsibility for. That's the first layer. Like, eventually you just get there.
Can I add to that first layer?
Of course.
Because the first layer of shame of the things that you have done, but it's also like another like space on that spectrum is things that were done to you that you took, that you believed were your fault and that you're doing. So things that were happened, things like violations that happened, that the belief in your head of a way to have power in that, in a sense, is to have made it your fault. So even though you didn't do it, the way that you view it is, I did this, therefore I am shameful. And so that's also on that really, really super fun shame spectrum of torment and hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that healing process looks like eventually you get like the internal fortitude and the strength to actually start facing some of those things. And then you have to, like, you face them. They come up and you have to sit with them and you have to realize, okay, here's some mistakes that I've made and I need to apologize for those mistakes. And that looked very, like for us in our relationship, that was also something that took a lot of practice, because I know, I mean, I'm speaking for myself now, but secretly I know that you did the same thing because I was there for these parts of our relationship. Like, we suck at apologizing, and our apologies weren't genuine. So they came from a place still.
I like that you immediately had to like call me out and put it on me. Like a part of that, instead of like speaking to you, you're like, you did it too. You did it too. See, we still practice. I mean, you're right. I did it too.
You're right.
I totally did it too.
No, let me speak real clear, because I don't want to do that. Right.
Yeah.
I had to practice apologizing a lot because my apologies were not genuine for a really long time. And I didn't realize that they weren't. I had to, I can have compassion now looking back, because I thought I was apologizing and I thought I was taking accountability for things. But in reality, I was still doing all of that stuff of, it's everything that we've talked about, where I would blame other people for those actions, or I would apologize, but then still try to shirk some of that responsibility off into other areas that, you know, because of X, Y, or Z, this is why this happened. And eventually I had to like get really honest about, because I could tell, like, there's a part of me, there's a part that I could always tell when I apologized to you when it didn't, like, I'm trying to think of how to articulate this. I think the thing that, for me, the barometer is if I'm apologizing to you in order to make you feel better, then it's not a genuine apology, right? If I'm apologizing to you so that I'm in some way not in trouble anymore, or we're moving past this moment or this experience, then it's not a genuine apology. And I could feel it in my body, because I would apologize to you and then immediately, like, all systems are scanning and looking for, did this work? Right? Subconsciously, it's like, did this fix the problem? Is this apology enough that now...
Did it work?
Did it work?
Did it work? Yeah.
Is this apology now getting me out of the hot seat? Is this going to fix the situation so that, okay, problem solved, the apology landed and it worked? So I would be looking for that.
And then sometimes mad if it didn't. Like, I apologize. What more do you want? Like, that's not an apology.
Yeah.
Like,
and I didn't realize any of that.
Like, you were like, I showed up. I apologized.
Right.
Come on. I'm like,
yeah,
you owe me, essentially.
Exactly. I didn't realize any of that in the moment. It really took a long time of practicing these apologies, as well as like you doing a beautiful job holding me accountable of like, yeah, that, you know, like even that process of you feeling safe enough to hold me accountable, but it's like, and it's not your responsibility. I just heard that.
No, it's not my responsibility, but it also like helps a healing dynamic when I don't play into it, which is also a choice that I can make. And it's a choice that I did make,
right?
Very much. Like, I had my own, like, I carried my share of the shit into that dynamic, definitely.
And fast forward to today, when I apologize, it is from this like really pure, genuine place of like, I am genuinely sorry.
Yeah.
And I fully acknowledge that, like, oftentimes my apologies aren't going to fix anything. Like, it's not like suddenly the apology makes the bad thing or the mistake or whatever it is go away.
Yeah.
And it doesn't fix how you're feeling. It just is a genuine apology for the mistake that I made.
And it's an intent for the future. See, like, that's the thing that people get caught up in too. Like you said it perfectly, is apologies fixing something. And so even to like go back further, getting something in return, but I'll touch back. I just really want to hone in on this part. Like, apologies do not fix anything. They don't fix anything. They don't erase anything. It's not all of a sudden that thing is gone. That didn't happen. Apologies are simply, I see what happened here. I see what my choices were, and I see how my choices affected you. Not, oh, I'm sorry you got affected by them. Like, I see the consequences of this, whether good or bad, right? But when we're apologizing for something, it's not a good consequence. A consequence? That's the word.
It's not a good thing.
It's not a good thing. But when you apologize, like an authentic apology, you're taking out accountability. You're seeing your actions. You're holding yourself accountability. You're recognizing what you did. You're not sugarcoating it. You're like, I see what I did here for whatever reason it is, without shaming yourself. We'll also dive into that. You're saying, this is how I'm going to work on this in the future. These are the steps that I'm going to take to not do this. I'm showing you that I recognize this and I don't want to do that again. And I don't want you to experience that again. So this is how I'm going to show up. It has nothing to do with the other person forgiving. It doesn't make anything go away. There's nothing that the other person can be like, oh, like whether they forgive you or not should not change your course of action if you are apologizing. If you're like, this isn't a behavior that I want to do and I'm going to change this, whether the other person forgives you or not, whether the other person stays in your life or not. It's not, I apologize and I'll do better as long as you give me this.
Right.
It's not an exchange. You know, it's like showing up as your best self, honoring yourself and honoring that person, or at least the way that you're going to move forward. And if you can't do that, even telling them that, I don't know how to change this. Like, we've had things, I'm like, I see this, I hear this, Craig. I don't even know how to fix this right now, or I don't know how to change this. I don't know how to change this behavior. And I don't know if I want to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a really hard thing to say. Like, I see how this is affecting you. I don't know if I can change it, and I don't know if I want to. But how much trust does that build? I'm not lying to you.
Right.
I'm not manipulating you. I'm not making you wrong for this thing. I'm not expecting you to do anything. And then when it starts to show up in ways and I see what I am working on it, I'm communicating that. And I'm saying, I do want to do this better. I want to show up better for you in this space. This is, I saw this come up. This is me actively practicing without expecting anything from you. You have no responsibility there. It doesn't mean that you're not accountable. Like, my behaviors, my actions, my choices, my accountability is not dependent on what I get from you, and vice versa. And that also goes into like one of the things that I would do, right? Is I would apologize a lot in really unhealthy ways. That's how I learned. So the apologies were very much an exchange. I would throw myself on the blade. I am so sorry. I'm a horrible person. I don't deserve love somehow. And now you need to make me feel better because I'm such a terrible person. That's one hell of a manipulative way to do that. Like, let me make this apology, so now you have to make me feel better, says that narcissist.
That's very common, though.
Right? It is.
It's not just a narcissistic thing, right? It's like that is, again, a way to skirt responsibility. Mm-hmm. I'm going to apologize profusely so much that it then triggers the part of you that is like, it's okay. It's not a big deal. You know what? Let's just move past it. You haven't done it. You know what? And then I'm just making you feel better. Mm-hmm. Right. I realized as you were talking, and this is something that I'm just like, you okay?
This is a hot topic. I'm like forgetting to exhale. I have to blow the air out. I'm just like.
It brings up a lot. It does. Because it's so ingrained with some of those really early, like, safety, security, right? How we are worthy of love or unworthy of love. Like, how
I disarmed violent situations, like all of this, like in all of these ways that this is going against survival.
I realized just now as you were talking that for a long time, and I didn't even have awareness of this until literally right now, but I didn't feel worthy of an apology. Mm-hmm. So when you would apologize in like a genuine, healthy way, not in the kind of the ways that you just described, where it can be profusely over apologizing and all of those kind of ways, but in a genuine way, I couldn't receive it. So it was like I wasn't worthy of that amount of love. Because like an honest, genuine apology is saying to the person, hey, I love you. Like, I value you as a human being, and I realize that this hurts you, and I'm sorry for that. I couldn't receive it. You would give me these really genuine apologies, and I literally, like, I can look back now and I can see, and this isn't that long ago, right? This is something that I'm just suddenly bringing awareness to in my own head in this fucking podcast of like, I couldn't even receive that. You would apologize to me and be like, yeah, whatever.
You would always tell me you don't, like, when you weren't mad, right? But when you weren't mad in your calm ways, it was, you don't ever owe me an apologize. You don't ever have to apologize for anything. And I'm like, what? That's what?
Right?
No, I don't. I do.
Yeah.
I do, and I'm going to.
And it's only recently, like probably within the last year or so, where I've started like accepting your apologies and being like, thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it's never, I forgive you, or, it's just like, you're like, I heard that apology was for me. And that's all. That apology is like, it is for you to do with as you choose. And you're doing such a good job receiving them.
Yeah.
Like, that's such a big step, Craig.
Well, I realized now as we're talking about it and as we're fleshing all of this out, I realized the reason why I couldn't receive them, obviously it's connected to my self-worth.
Yeah.
And the realization of like, I don't deserve an apology because in the back of my mind, I have, I've got my list of reasons why I'm not worthy enough for an apology that just can like that date all the way back to kindergarten, like 4 years old, 3 years old. Right. And so I wasn't even able to like accept that amount of love and compassion from you. And you're apologizing for your actions, right? You're
Right.
apologizing for something that hurt me in a sense, or, caused me some sort of
You're
emotional
nervous to even say
dysregulation.
that. You're like, you don't even want to say that what I did hurt you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But sometimes my behaviors were very, very, very hurtful.
Yeah.
And sometimes they hurt you, and you definitely deserved an apology.
Yeah. Yeah.
You are practicing loving yourself so good.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of you. I know not too much.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I hadn't had that awareness of this dynamic. I definitely could see how I needed to change when it came to accountability and apologizing and everything. And that's been I have a lot of, I'm proud of myself for being able to make those shifts, because they feel so different now. Like, I can feel it inside my body, the difference between, a vast majority of our relationship of not being accountable for my actions. And that felt like shit, It didn't feel good. It didn't feel good to myself, and I know it didn't feel good to you, and it just feels so different now to be able to be in this place of integrity and truthfulness and accountable. It feels very, very different. But it's taken a lot of work to get to this point because of all the reasons why we've talked about it, why, how it manifests. And I just think it's something that people don't realize.
Yeah.
And I know we didn't realize
Yeah.
it. I know we didn't understand what was playing out in this dynamic of holding each other accountable and calling each other out and throwing around half-ass apologies. And we just played out all of those dynamics over the past,
really good at all that.
We had a long life of learning how to avoid all of those things.
Right.
Yeah.
Our shadows had a torrid love affair. They were playing in all the ways.
What else? Is there anything else on our list that we don't want to
that we don't want to talk about?
That we don't want to forget?
That we don't want to forget? Okay. Well, there's a shift here. So again, we mentioned at the beginning of the call, of the over apologizers. And also, this is going to be hard to hear. Apologizing out of shame isn't an apology. Out of shame, blame, not feeling like you're good enough, low self-worth apologies, apologizing for your existence. Love to you. But that is really it's
a survival mechanism.
It is a survival mechanism. It is not an apology, and you're worth so much more than that. And you get the right to be here. Mm-hmm. Stop apologizing. Hold on. You don't have to apologize for your existence. You're not doing anything wrong. You get to be here. You were valued by being here. However, all of these, not however to that, moving on, my vocab.
You're doing great.
I am a work in progress. So when we're having all these unhealthy apologizing things, either over apologizing, never apologizing, feeling like you're owed an apology, apologizing to get something in return, all of these essentially are control. These are power plays. Even when you're I'm not controlling, I'm a pushover. That itself was a really hard one for me to grab, is control. You are still finding out how to control your environment and control the other person in a way to keep you safe, even though you might not have any control in that space. So you don't realize it's controlling or trying to, a power play. It's exactly what it is. Being overpowered by somebody doesn't mean that you are powerless, and it doesn't mean that you aren't involved in these unhealthy things. It's really hard to look at. It's really hard to sit here and unpack. But when you get out of these, the power plays apologies, and you start to authentically apologize, receive authentically apologies, not feel like if somebody apologizes to you, you don't owe them anything. You don't owe them forgiveness. You don't owe them access to your life. You don't owe them access to you. You don't owe them anything. It's up to you if you want to accept it or not. It's up to you if you continue that relationship with them or not. It is up to you. How they choose to apologize and how they choose to show up in your space does not mean that you owe somebody anything. An authentic apology does not earn anything from the other person. It can cultivate things together, and it can heal together, and it can like create new pathways, but it is not owed. It is not a
quid pro quo.
Whoa.
Hold on. A quid pro quo.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
We are not high. Like that is us trying to talk through triggering conversations.
A quid
pro quo.
Pro.
GoPro? Okay.
Moving on.
So when you move out of that, it goes from over apologizing for everything or never apologizing in this power place to empowering. So when you are empowered, you're not trying to take power. So you also can recognize in yourself when it is time to apologize. And you can give that. And you can recognize in yourself when like an apology is needed and whether or not you accept that. It goes from this like desperation and like trying to disassociate and deflect and like move away to a calmness, a knowing inside. And that is amazing. And it's scary and it's hard. I had to practice this with an email I was writing this morning to people at, our kids' school. Because on one hand, I was like, this isn't my fault. Like, if all of these things, I even said, like, if these things would have happened, how many people, like, I had to, in that email, make sure I did not articulate anything that took the responsibility off of where it was. I had accountability, like, man, I overlooked this. I missed this. Is there still a way that we can have this conversation? I missed a date to have a meeting. Mm-hmm. And like, I had to actively practice accountability and something as simple as that. Mm-hmm. And to not make it, well, if you would have done this, if you would have called, if you would have emailed. No.
Yeah.
I dropped the ball on this. I'm not a terrible person. I don't deserve to be shamed. Like I missed this. I overlooked this. This is important. And I'm sorry that I missed it, or I don't know how the wording that I use. I said, I'm really disappointed that I overlooked this, or I don't remember the wording that I used. But then ask, like, is there a way that we can come together with this without putting blame anywhere else? Because it wasn't a blame. It wasn't a shame. Nobody did anything like really wrong. I overlooked it. That's where the accountability is. So practicing in those little things help. And even those little things are super hard. And if that's the case, that tells you something.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Do you feel differently now when you apologize to me?
When I apologize to you? Very much.
Can you explain what it feels like for you?
Everything is like slow. Like the apology now is like everything, it doesn't feel like it's here, right? It's like, oh, I
Meaning
see
in
you.
Your chest?
No, like this panic, this fear, this like, I'm going to lose you. I'm going to like love. And I'm so like terrible and you're going to leave me now. And I don't deserve you. I never deserved you. All of these things that I'm like, I'm going to apologize profusely so you will still love me. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, like, I'm sorry. Like it feels different. It feels like this calmer thing. And it's about you. It is all about you and not in an over way that's still about me, right? It's about you. And then to tell you when I'm going to change these behaviors, like I feel that. Like it's not a desperation. It's not a me trying to change who I am so I can be the person that you want me to be so that you will still love me. It's just like, God, yeah, I fucked that up. And I'm going to do better here. Or I see that. I didn't see that. And I don't know how to fix that right now. But you're very, very important to me. So it's just different.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel chaotic. And I don't do it so that you still love me. That doesn't mean that I don't want you to still love me. Mm-hmm. I do want you to still love me. But I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it because I don't want to hurt you. My action hurt you. I don't want it to hurt you. And when you point out something that I'm doing that I haven't seen, that is not a behavior that not only do you not deserve, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to show up that way. It's time to look at that shadow. Like, I want to address it. So it doesn't feel like an attack, even though sometimes, everything's a practice. Sometimes do I still feel attacked and have to defend myself? Yeah. I'm a work in progress.
Yeah.
But it feels very different.
I'm glad.
How about you?
Yeah, I spoke to it earlier.
I know, but I just got
One of the things too that I want to highlight is we've been talking a lot about this in the in the dynamic of a relationship, right? Your partner, a committed romantic partner, and of course, it doesn't apply to just that. All of this applies across the board with all of your interactions and all of your relationships. Because I've been thinking about, as we've been sitting here talking, I've been thinking about how this relates to our kids.
Right.
That's
a big one.
And apologizing to them from this healthy place that we have eventually found ourselves in now, right? And being able to bring it forth into those relationships with our kids.
It doesn't put responsibility on them to now they have to forgive us. Like, no.
Not only do they not have to forgive us, but we also just get to like it's really hard to apologize to our kids from this place of like, because you recognize like there's a dynamic here, because we explained it earlier in our relationship where we can apologize for a hurt, right? For a mistake that caused the other person harm, and then just let that be in and of itself. I don't have to worry about fixing how you feel because of my mistake. That is also something I've been practicing with the kids. And that's like so fucking hard.
It's very, very.
Because your responsibility, and it's not actually,
we hear it.
It's not actually a responsibility, but the program in my head is my responsibility is to keep those kids safe from harm, from pain, from emotional distress. And it's not, right? There's no way I can do that.
Well, like there's different levels too. Like they're adults, most of them now, like most of them and almost all of them now. And so there's not like the role that we have in their life now is not a role that we are entitled to.
Right.
Like it is not our literal responsibility to do that. We are not entitled to access to them. Like when we do that now, they don't have to let us come in and fix. They don't have to let us do any of that, because now being a part of their life, I mean, it's always been a privilege, but it is a privilege. It's an honor that they give us, that they get to take away. They don't have to do anything that we suggest. They don't have to accept any apology. So us going in and trying to fix it a lot of times directs them away from what they're wanting to do, unless they say, can you help me?
Yeah.
In which case, here we come to save the day. Like, right? So that's really hard to like find that balance of, we don't get to work off past karma at their expense.
Yeah. It's really hard.
Fucking hard. Because all we want to do is like, we see so much now.
Yeah. So many mistakes we made.
Fucked all that up.
Right.
We want to make it better.
Yeah.
They just need a little bit of space.
They need a lot of space.
Yeah.
Not a little bit.
Like,
they need a lot of space.
Right?
They're all, we'll come to you. Cool.
Yeah.
We'll come. We'll be here. We'll be waiting.
Yeah.
Anything else? I want to wrap so that we can go do our other things that we got to do today.
No.
Anything else on the list? So hopefully this is something that you can totally relate to. Obviously, it has far more to do than just being able to relate with your partner, right? We've highlighted that. And it's a hard thing. So just get this, like the intention of talking about this on the podcast is just to spark it inside of your mind, right? Shift up the way that maybe you're looking at things and doing things. And we'll probably, like, as we've been talking about this, I'm like, we should definitely design a workshop around this. Because this is something that could totally be.
I think it's on the list already.
Right.
Of ones that are,
Yeah, because there's a lot here of exploring this and looking at it and then learning how to heal and change and grow and get to the point. Like, luckily for us, we're at this point where we have this ability to show up differently and apologize and take accountability and responsibility for our actions. And man, it just is so worth it.
Right.
It's so worth it because it feels so different and it's so healthy and It's like that's how you start to create all of those secure attachment styles instead of all the other ones that we were raised with. So hopefully you've benefited a little bit. And if you have questions, always feel free to reach out. We tell people this all the time, but you can email us questions anytime about something that comes up on the podcast that you just want to chat about, or maybe it sparked something that you want to share with us. You can always email those questions to us, and you can also just send them to us on any of the platforms that you follow us on social and everything else. So,
and again, as we always say, if you don't explicitly state in your question that we can use your name, we won't.
Yeah. So moving on now to the end of the episode, here's our segue to the last segment.
Do you want to get like a theme song for it?
We talk about it every time, and we never do.
Before we do, did you notice what I did today?
You didn't have a clicky pen?
I did this for you. I have a non-clicky pen.
Good job, babe.
Boom.
Great job.
So I could make that as a segue introduction, but I don't have a clicky.
Right. There you go. I'm so glad you just figured that out.
Into the questions we do for you.
So every episode we answer somebody's question. And you can also submit those questions, info@energyislove.love. So hit us up and we'll answer your question on the podcast. This week's question is, I feel like I'm always working on something when it comes to healing. It's a lot on top of all the other things life has. Let's see, on top of all the other things I have to do. I feel like if I stop working on myself, though, I'll backslide. What to do?
Take a break.
I can relate. I know Steph can relate as well.
Yeah.
You get to a certain point where the fear of like losing all the momentum that you've built up because of all the things that you've kind of uncovered and started to heal, and all the shifts that you started to change, if I stop, then I'm going to lose all that momentum. And the idea of like past behaviors resurfacing and fucking up your life some more.
It's terrifying.
It's very terrifying. And it's happening already.
Yeah. It's going to happen whether you just bulldoze your way through it or you take a break. It's going to happen.
Yeah, there's no way to avoid it.
Yeah. That's not a hopeless thing. That's not a scary thing. It's like the natural ebb and flow of life, of the universe. Like you cannot outrun that as hard as you try to. Speaking from experience.
So like specifically, what can you do in this situation? Allow yourself all the patience and understanding, because it's not a race. You're not running out of time. It's just this lifelong journey of healing that you're on. So there's plenty of time to do it. And also you're human, like the realization of you can't do everything all at once. You're just not able to. Nobody's able to. And like we have this thing in society where we have to be able to multitask. You know, if you don't have 16 things up in the air right now that you're juggling and trying to be proficient at all across the board, then you're failing in some way.
If you're not working yourself to absolute deaths, spreading yourself to the uttermost extremes of impossibilities, you're just failing.
Yeah, like if you're not healing your shit, if you're not cultivating a healthy relationship with your partner, if you're not being the best parent that you are, if you have kids, if you're not showing up for your job as the best employee, if you're not the greatest neighbor, if you
not the greatest kid,
if you're not all of those things,
and you have to be doing all that simultaneously.
Exactly, it's just not reasonable,
right?
We wouldn't expect that of anybody else, and yet we expect it of ourselves.
Yeah.
So recognize that as well, and that's just like an innate thing that's in society, and we're all programmed with that thing. And it's okay to just say fuck it, and it's okay to just say, yeah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. You're not saying ever.
Yeah. It's okay to just set it down. It's okay to take a week off. It's okay to take a year off. It's okay to recognize that I'm overwhelmed and I'm not going to look at healing my past traumas for the next 6 months, right? All of those things are totally okay.
Yeah. They're needed.
We've taken time off, like consciously, there was a time period, and this wasn't that long ago either, where I was consuming so much content. I was reading podcasts, therapy. I was like entrenched in all of this work and trying to heal all of my stuff. And eventually I was just like, fuck all that, because I was too overwhelmed. So I stopped listening to things. I stopped reading things. I just literally kind of pushed pause on everything and took a step back. And it was scary. I thought that same thing, that I was going to backslide. I thought that all my, all the momentum that I had built up, and like in some way I was letting myself down. That's oftentimes the narrative that I have, where I've cultivated this inner relationship with my inner child, and I'm now showing up for that inner child, right, in the way that nobody else ever has. And if I don't show up for that inner child every single day by doing all of my work, then I'm letting that part of myself down. And I don't want to let that part down ever, right? So I have that dynamic that I play in my head. And the thing that I've used, right, wrong, or indifferent, but I realize that what I also want to teach that inner child is that they don't have to be perfect, and that they can, in fact, make mistakes, and it's okay. And that if they do happen to let somebody down or feel like they've let somebody down, including themselves, that's okay, that they're still worthy of love. So I would just give yourself the biggest break in the world, because you're never, ever going to be able to accomplish it all to the level that you expect. And truthfully, you're probably doing way more than you could even imagine. Right. So reflect back at how far you've come in the last year or the last 5 years. And it probably looks very, very different than more, So anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I want to really trying to reframe some awareness here, just reframe this a bit in taking a break and being afraid of backsliding and how that completely debilitates you. But when we're going and going and going and going, and just like you said, like that bulldozing forward, and you're consuming all of this content, constantly working, you're running out of gas. Like, even though you're determined that you're going to be able to keep going and all these things are going to keep coming on top, because working on your shit is hard. It is not easy. It's like, this is all the shit that you've been running from your whole life, and now you're facing it, and it's going to be hard. But when you're continuing to go forward without taking a break and allowing yourself this incredibly crucial integration period, you're just like, you're going to stop retaining. All of this work, all of this effort is turning into an autopilot itself, and you're not integrating that work. It's not going through. It's just you're hitting it in almost like a trauma response again by bulldozing and tunnel focusing on it. So allowing yourself these breaks to happen so you can allow this to integrate into your body, into your brain, catch your breath, get some fuel back in your tank, do some things that are just complete self-care. And self-care does not always mean you have to go book a spa or you have to do all of these. Self-care is however you recharge. Nobody else gets to put a label on how you recharge.
Yeah, mine's a nap sometimes.
Right? Great. But the truth is these things are going to resurface. They're going to come up. But you were much more adept and able to handle them in a way that you are working towards, that you're choosing when you have rested and when you have allowed yourself to recharge than you would be when you were stretched and you've just been going. So you actually get to go you actually get to go farther by allowing yourself rest and recharging, because it's going to come back. It's going to come back. It just matters what level of energy you have when it circles back to you.
I love the awareness on the integration part of it.
Yeah.
Because that's a crucial step that we often don't even bring awareness to. We don't even realize it. So if you even want to use that as kind of your trick and way of getting yourself comfortable with slowing down, just recognize that, I'm integrating. This is my integration period. Right. So even in the integration process, you're still doing work. You're still healing, because you're allowing for all of the change to actually integrate into your actual body and into your life. And so,
yeah, that's how you start to retain
and grow.
Absorb. Yeah. So take a break.
Thank you for the question. Yeah. As always, you can email those to us, info@energyislove.love. We love to get those questions. We love to answer them on the podcast, and we love to interact and engage with you. So thank you for submitting the question.
Thank you.
This was a great episode. Oh, my goodness, I really enjoyed it. I think we've got some awareness for ourselves that we need to look at some more, which I'm excited for, right? Yeah. And then, let's design a workshop for this.
Let's do it. I mean, today it's the full moon releasing. I'm about to go take a bath.
Yeah, we're going to do some of that self-care right now.
Right.
I'm hungry, so let's go eat lunch. And thank you for sticking with us, folks. Yeah. And if this is like the first episode that you've ever listened to, thank you for showing up. Yeah. We not tell everybody. We demand everybody. We ask of everybody to share it with somebody.
Demand avoidance just clicked off right there.
Just share it with somebody that you think will benefit, whether that's your partner, your best friend, or whoever, right? And go enjoy the day.